right. We'll be starting up in like a second. So you like 23 seconds. I know that's not 1 second, but. 23 seconds from now. That's the amount of time I'm giving myself. Yeah. Oh my God. All right. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Welcome. Yo, it's another lecture. Woo! All right. Yeah. It is time for another lecture. Yeah. DJ drama. Yeah. So today we're gonna do a little bit more lecturing. How are you liking Tiny App? How's that going? You love it. Enjoyment. Yeah. CSS. Can I get a round of applause for Tiny App? Yeah. Can I get a round of applause for not knowing what CSS does? Yeah. All right. And just another round of applause to treat yourself. Yeah, this one's for you. So we're going to today be talking about a couple different things. I want to state that some of the stuff that I'm going to be talking about in lecture today does not relate immediately back to Tiny App, but that's okay. Today's just more time for you to continue working on Tiny App. Some of the stuff that I'm going to be talking about is like neat, and it'll be relevant later on in the bootcamp, right? Just so that you will have seen it now. I also want to make ample time today to do some review, just in case there are concepts that you want a little bit of time to be talked about, and that's totally good. Like you just said right here, James, you said you implied you want help with CSS, so I'll make time for that. Right? You know what? We'll build an application, and usually my demos are pretty bare bones as far as the visual portion of it goes, but I'll make extra effort into making it look nice so we can talk about CSS. Right off the bat, before we even start review or anything, what else is causing you grief right now? Like, are there things that you would like to have some time today to talk about? Yes. Okay. Yes. we'll try to make some time for that. What else? For the debugger, it's not a thing that we don't tell you to use the debugger for Tiny App, right? No? Okay. All right. I thought they snuck that into the curriculum without telling me. Yeah, so I will move the debugger stuff just one line down, right? Because I will move the it's still on here. It's on here, No, we'll make some time for the debugger as well. And what else? I saw a hand go up in this direction. Did you have something? No? Yes. So I don't use the debugger very often. Yeah. I just use console.log. Is that going to be hindering me in the future? Nope. Console.log is fine. Right? Console.log is fine for now, right? There are going to be situations where maybe when you're working on big, complicated things, you're going to have more funky debugging tools, such as the debugger or inspector or whatever they choose to call it in Node. I'm very familiar with a tool in Ruby that you will be using later on in bootcamp called Pry, or another one called Bybug, that are a nicer version of your debugger. Basically, your bread and butter is going to be console log, right? I didn't get to do that particular lecture with you, but early on in week 1, usually what I tell people is the one place where bugs show up, or the one place where as a developer you find things start becoming confusing and difficult, is when your code becomes opaque to you, right? When it's not as clear what your code is doing. Because you write a bunch of code and then you go npm start or whatever and you run it and you're like, I hope it works. Who knows what's going on back there until it crashes. And your code crashing, that's awesome. Like your code crashing gives you a ton of information. It says it does not work, and you learn from that. But it would be nicer if you get some transparency into how your code is running, even while it's running successfully. And in JavaScript, your main tool for increasing transparency in your code is your console log. Right? Console log is going to basically be your X-ray vision into how your code is running. I like to think of console log as kind of like, Emmental cheese, and it has all those holes in it. You look in the cheese. You're like, yep, that's cheese. Because let's say cheese could have mold in it, right?
Did you plan this out?
No, cheese could have mold in it, and if it has no holes, you won't know if there's mold on the inside. You'd have to break it apart. But if you have Emmental cheese, right? The cheese has holes, and you have a higher kind of degree of comfort with knowing that there's no mold in it because you can see into it, right? That makes sense, right? Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. You don't want mold in cheese. Unless you've got gorgonzola, you got some tasteful bugs in your code, yeah. A console log. That's a good thing to say, yeah. So the console log, it's a very quick kind of solution to things. Let's just see what this is right now. When you're working in VS Code, unfortunately, I just don't know how to make this work in Vagrant. But VS Code actually has a debugger built into it. This is the little symbol. It says, no bug, no bugs. And when you click on it, it pops open a little thing that shows you a list of variables and a thing called a call stack and all that. What's that? Sweet. So it works. The thing is, it's not going to work inside of Vagrant. It does work inside of Vagrant? All right. Cool. In that case, then, yeah. I mean, you can technically run your scripts. So say I have, a script in here. I don't tend to use this very often. I don't do most of my work in Express. I do a lot of my work in other languages, but you can technically configure this thing to run the particular script that you want. So in this case here, I have this script called script.js, and it console logs a bunch of trash, and then it console logs hello world or whatever. And I can either run it by going into my terminal and going node script.js, or you can run it by clicking this button, and it'll run it for you. Right? It'll run it for you, and among the things that I can do is I can set breakpoints, saying this is where I want the code to stop. So when I run this now, the code will stop there, show me what the current variables are. Right? It'll show me all the current variables, and then I'll be able to step forward in my code bit by bit and see things happen. Right? Or say I have and I could edit it too. So say I have a variable, let I equals 0, and then I might go I++, and then I++, and I++. I do a bunch of stuff. As I run this, I might see that I is increasing, and I could, inside my variables, it's going to be in here, way in here. Where are you at? Where are you at? You're in here somewhere. There's going to be the variable I in here, and I can do stuff along the lines of add it to be watched, and then I would see it up here. And it's basically like a souped up console log. What I want to say right now is that tooling in programming is expansive, right? Depending on even the framework that you work in, whether you're working with Express, or maybe you're working with React, or you're working with other stuff, there's going to be endless amounts of tooling to help you increase like your development speed, increase the speed at which you can find bugs and do all that kind of stuff. The thing is, it's this whole other world that's specific to the language that you're working in, right? One of the things that is cross-language is your console log. Every language is going to have the ability to print out to the screen, right? Whether you're working in JavaScript, where it's a console log, or whether you're working in Ruby, where it's puts. Maybe you're working in Python, where it's print. Maybe you're working in Java, where it's system.out.println, right? Like, they're all going to have something to print to the screen, right? And that's going to be your easiest way of figuring out what's going on. For right now, unfortunately, the answer that I'm going to have to give you, Aiden, is, yeah, it feels hacky, or it feels like newbie. But guess what? You're noobs, right? Like, you're noobs, right? Like, get good, and then we'll show you the tools. Yeah. So, like, give it some time. In fact, what I do recommend is put it in your calendar later in boot camp, right? Like, pick a day, and then come grab me when that event pops up. Maybe 2 weeks from now, come grab me, and I'll show you some of the tools that I like to use for debugging, right? Yeah, on the inspector, I mean, really all that is it's just showing you that it exists so that you're not surprised when you see it later. For right now, I'd honestly even say just ignore that, right? Just ignore that and just get into the habit of throwing console logs in as much as possible, right? If it helps, again, think of cheese with mold, put holes in it, you see where the mold is. Is that a good example?
I don't know where I got it. It's really cheese, man.
Yeah, your like visceral reaction to that was so we'll talk about what the point of today is. Like I said, there's going to be like a little bit of review about whatever you guys want to learn, but I do want to make some time for the actual topic. Where the topic of today is week 3, day 4. It is day 4, right? Okay, nice. Yeah, oh man, week 3, day 4. Real world HTTP servers. You're in the real world now. We're going to make some real HTTP servers. I'll give you some context just to the lecture for today. The past few lectures that you've had on HTTP and Express have been for the purpose of progressing in TinyApp, right? They've been for the purpose of progressing in TinyApp. HTTP and servers and creating these servers. You spend your whole life learning this stuff, and you will. You're going to spend a lot of time. You have to start off small and just do the basic things that are needed to set up a small project. Right? As your projects get bigger, as the lines of code in your project get like longer and longer and longer, for example, TinyApp, not uncommon to have it be like 200-ish lines of code, just in your Express like server file, right? Not uncommon. And it can be a little overwhelming where you're just like scrolling through this big mass of stuff. So as you're working on bigger projects, one of the things that you might want to do is split your code into files. Right? And we're going to look at how that works specifically for Express. Right? Because Express is going to have its own way of doing that. We're also going to be talking, and this is in like no particular order. We'll see what's going on. We're also going to be talking about how to decide what your routes should be. Right? Some of the like things that I hear people say at the beginning of boot camp is that with an activity or like a set of activities like TinyApp, we give you a lot of answers such as make a route get/this, right? Or make a route that does this, and we give you what that route should be. When you're building your own application, it can be a little bit tough to say, like, do I need get/something? What about post/something else, right? How do I make those decisions? That's something that we're going to be looking at, is like deciding on how we get our routes, specifically by following a set of rules that I'm going to be calling REST. And so we'll be learning about what REST is today. I want to, once again, explicitly say, these two things here, not necessarily core to TinyApp, right? you can absolutely, if you want to challenge yourself, do these things for TinyApp for your submission. Just be prepared. It'll take you a little bit of extra time, right? But moving forward in other applications, we will be using this stuff, right? So you'll see it in the future. So those are the two kind of main big ones as new topics. And then I want to also do some review on this week's stuff, specifically in authentication, right, with like cookies. And we'll do like a little bit of a light recap of that because it'll feed into the demo that I'm building. How many people feel 100% confident with authentication and user registration and all that? Excellent. So we'll be spending some good time on that. And then the other thing that we'll talk about is middleware a little bit. Okay? This lecture might go a little long. Right? It won't be 3 hours. It'll be maybe 2 and 10 minutes, if that's okay. So how many people here know what middleware is at this point? Cool. You can use it. Yeah. So we'll be talking about exactly what middleware is in depth. I want you to feel like middleware experts at the end of it. In fact, I might make you a little middleware certificate or a pin or something that you can wear proudly to let everybody know that I know middleware. Now, I think what I want to start off with is having you tell me what you know about a couple different words. So I'm going to put down this word here, HTTP. Just real quick, what does it stand for? Text Transfer Protocol. OK. Somebody tell me what you know about HTTP, just quickly. Where is it used? OK, I should have.
Everyone all at once.
Yeah. All right, we're going to go with Julia. What did you say? Right, request response protocol. Right? That's an excellent way to put it. Somebody makes a request, another person makes a response. Right? HTTP. Yes. Sure. On top of a TCP connection. You know what my favorite part about HTTP is? We can ignore this, right? Totally. It's 100% on top of a TCP connection. But the one thing that really matters to us as web developers, and it's still there, is that it's a request and response protocol. Meaning, there are how many actors in an HTTP? Two actors in an HTTP transaction. 2 of them. One is a client. One is a server, right? The client wants some stuff. The server has that stuff. So the client's going to be asking, the server prepares and sends back, right? HTTP, with these requests and responses, do they have to have a particular structure to them, right? Does a request have to look like something? Yes and no? Was that a no? It was a yes. What would a request typically kind of look like? A method. And what would the method be? Get. I heard put, I heard post. Is there another one? Delete. These are the ones that we care about. There's other ones? Yeah, well, it's patch, right? There's an info one. Yeah, there's a head one. There's an options one. I don't even know what we're going to use them for in this bootcamp. You're never going to touch that. The ones that we care about for bootcamp are get, put, post, delete. Right? These are the ones you're going to be using like 99.99999% of the time. Right? If you want to learn about the other ones, come grab me at some point after lecture, and we'll talk about that. So we got our methods. And our methods are specifically for what? What do they do? What's that? They direct me to a route, but specifically from a semantic point of view.
They're like, it's what you want out of the transaction.
Exactly. It's what I want out of the transaction, right? So, for example, these requests are usually, or I'm going to say always, about a resource, right? I'm going to start using the word resource today a lot. And the resource is going to be defined by the path, right? So /dogs, right? Or /cats. These are the resource slash burger, right? It's a resource that I'm like trying to tap into. If I showed up somewhere, like at a store or a restaurant, and I just yell out burger, like there's no context as to what I want with the burger. It's just the word burger. But if I say get burger, then people there are like, typical Nima wants a burger, right? Like wants to receive a burger. But I might show up to the restaurant and go post burger, and I throw a burger to the wall. And I'm like, here you go, here's a new burger. The path is going to define the resource that I'm doing something with, or that I would like to do something with. Method is going to say what I want to do to that thing. Right? And that's going to be really important to us. Now, with each of these requests, there's got to be somebody who listens to this to eventually generate a response. We're going to talk about what the response is in a second. I know you've already done that, but I'm going to get you to give me some input on that. But the thing is, the server has to listen to this request. And the server, when it listens to this request, has to decide what to do. The easiest way for us to do this is to list out to the server, hey, server, if someone, we'll just scroll down, if someone asks to get a burger, give them a burger. Right? If someone brings you a burger, just take it, just take the burger. And these are like different things that I can tell the server, hey, when somebody asks you these particular things, here's how you should respond or how you should react to that, right? What we're dealing with here is we're declaring a bunch of different routes that the server is able to respond to, right? The server is going to have specified routes, right? Specified routes. A client needs to behave according to the routes that the server has specified, right? If the server only has routes that have to do with getting or posting burgers, and somebody comes in and they try to, like, say this is the client makes a get request to slash potato salad, right? The server just won't know how to respond. The server's going to be like, I don't know, 404, not found. I don't know how to deal with that kind of request. And this idea, does it make sense to everyone at a high level? Right? So what we're going to do today is we're going to build up an application that's, again, similar to your Tiny app. Right? You've already been working with this stuff. But I'm going to throw in a ton of different routes. Right? I'm going to throw in a bunch of routes. It's going to get kind of messy, and we're going to clean it up. Now, I said that part of it would also be deciding what routes we need to make. And the only way that we'll really be able to decide what routes we need is for me to outline what the application that I'm building is today. Right? I'm thinking that, and I know we haven't talked about the response yet. We'll get to this. No, I'm kidding. So our particular demo today, right? Our particular demo today to highlight all the concepts that I want to talk about is going to be, I'm thinking, a website where people make accounts. People with accounts can log in. We're also going to say maybe that people who have logged in can create new posts. And people who have logged in can comment on posts. And I've written out basically a description of the application that I want to make. There could be a little bit more of a description. Maybe on the home page, I should see a login screen, or rather like a login bar or something. Right? On the home page, I should see a list of posts. Right? When I go to a posts page, I should see comments. If I'm logged in, I should be able to comment. Right? We may or may not be able to complete all of these tasks, right? But I'm using this as a framework to kind of start a demonstration, right? There's a lot of tasks in here that are going to be repeats of each other. So So I may or may not do those as time permits. Sound good? Right. This kind of thing that I've laid out here is called a user story, right? Or a series of user stories, right? A description of what my application is supposed to do. And what's nice about something like this is that I can look at this. I can look at this and start defining the particular nouns that are present in my application. Can somebody point out a noun, whether it's singular or plural, in any of these sentences? See? So should see.
Or sorry, noun. Sorry.
Yeah.
I was thinking about like the get.
You're thinking verbs. Yeah. Let's talk about nouns first. Yeah.
I don't know, so like you're talking about like places that we're gonna end up.
Maybe. Yeah. Accounts, posts, comments, right? So I look here and I see that a lot of the words that pop up as resources or nouns, like a physical thing, is like an account is a thing. Right? Right? An account is a thing. A post is a thing. Comments are things. Right? These are things that I can say exist. If I wanted to have my application live in a physical place, like a physical world, I could have buckets into which I throw accounts, or I'm going to change the wording over here to be users. Right, so user is a thing. So make accounts meaning new user. And then I'm going to change the word people to users. So I might have a list of users. I might also have a list of posts. Maybe every post belongs to a user. And I might have a list of comments. Every comment might belong to another user, or that comment might belong to a post. I might have to make a decision about that. Right? Is a comment tied to a post? Is it tied to a user? Is it tied to both? I'm going to have to think about that. But the first place to start is when I have these sentences here, pick out the resources. And so my resources are going to be users, posts, and comments. Okay. Now, in some of these stories here, am interacting with those resources. Actually, that's what you ended up starting off with, was seeing, right? I should see posts, right? What I'm doing there is I'm interacting with the resources. I'm using a verb. I should see a post. So my verbs here tend to usually be things like see, or create, or update, delete. Right? Those are my usual verbs. And these verbs here are going to kind of directly map over to a set of actions which we call the CRUD actions. Right? I think you've already talked about CRUD. What does CRUD stand for? Create, read, update, and delete, or I personally like destroy. It's got a bit more of like a, destroy. So create, read, update, destroy, or delete. And those are the actions. And I might look in my resources and I'll say, hey, there are some cases where, as part of my stories, I want to be able to create a user. Right? I might also want to be able to see a particular user or something, but it's not in my stories. There isn't a story anywhere here that says, get a user. Right? I'm not seeing that in here. For posts, I have stories that say, I want to be able to create a new post. Right? Actually, do I? I didn't write that in. Yeah, users who have logged in can create new posts. So I'm over here and I'm like, okay, I might be able to create new posts. If I look through my user stories, I'll also find that there's a place where when I go to a posts page, I should see comments. There's a couple different ways that I could think about this. This could be said as see the comments for a post. Right? I could word that to myself as I want to see the comments for a post. And another way that I could say this is I want to see the details for a post. Right? Like I want to actually see the post itself. I want to see who made it. And then there's the extra information, including the comments. And depending on how I phrase this to myself, depending on which is more important, I might decide that this is really a question about the comments of the post, or maybe it's a question about the post itself. Right? In my case right now, what I'm going to say is that this is going to be a thing about the details for a post. So I'll say that I can get a particular post to see it. And you see how that's a pretty blurry kind of decision, though, right? I wouldn't be wrong if I decided to say that that's actually about getting the comments for a post. Right? I wouldn't be wrong. In my case here, though, I've put my foot down and I've just decided it's going to be a get for posts. I think later on in this demo, though, we'll look at the opposite if I had done it the other way and see that it doesn't really change too much. It's just about making a decision. And then over here, if I go to my comments resources, I go through here and I say, well, I have a particular thing that says I should be able to comment. Right? I should be able to comment. So I could say that means creating a new comment. Right? And this is going to be a process that I can't just go through once. Right? In fact, as I'm looking at it right now, I'm realizing that I have a particular user story that says, on the home page, I should see a list of posts. That's something I haven't really thought about. Maybe I need some way to retrieve all of the posts, right? Retrieve all of them as opposed to retrieving a single post. So over here, up in my posts, I might say, well, get many or get one. Right? Those are going to be maybe slightly different routes that I'm going to have to deal with. Right? So get many, get one, create, all for posts. Something for users and something for comments. Right? What I've done here is, by taking myself through this inquisitive process of what are my resources and what are the things that I do to them based on my user stories, is I've enacted a kind of framework or a structure for building routes called REST. Right? REST means representational state transfer. Why? I don't know. REST is kind of like a big thing. REST has a lot of moving parts to it. But interestingly enough, the only real important bits of it are REST lets you decide what routes you need based on the resources and the verbs that are present in your application story. Right? Because each of these create or gets, right? Or say I had a story for I should be able to update a post, which I haven't done yet, but maybe I will. Each one of those things is going to map directly from your CRUD actions to your HTTP methods. And so all of a sudden, through this brainstorming session, what I've ended up with is all the possible routes that cover these things, which are get/users, right? Oh, sorry, shoot. Post/users, right? For this thing here. Post/users. Post/posts for creating a new post. I also have get/posts for getting many posts. And if I wanted to get a particular post, this would be get/post/an ID. Right? For example, get/posts/12. Right? That is an example. If I wanted to create a new comment, what do you think my route would be for that? Yeah, post/comments. So REST is going to have some opinions. What REST says is the methods that you use need to directly map to the CRUD action that you're doing. And your path here needs to specify the resource that we're acting on. So if I want to create a new resource, my path needs to end in a plural. It needs to go create a new user in the users collection. Right? It's a mental collection of users. If I'm trying to receive many things, plural. If I'm trying to receive one thing or update one thing, that's what I'm trying to target, /posts/ID. Right? Your nouns are always going to be in plural. And if you need to specify a singular one, then you'll go /ID. Can we nest things? Absolutely. Maybe if I want to say that a comment lives inside of a post, post/posts, the particular post, the comments for that particular post, right? That's the recipe that REST uses to define the routes, right? REST is not the only way to come up with this kind of stuff. Like, you can come up with your own routes as you see fit. The posts, like, you can call this thing anything you want, but REST says, hey, let's make this less confusing for people. Let's come up with a recipe. Right? If things are nested, we're going to go this way. Right? And again, I want you to see that this is like an iterative approach. Like, I need to roll over this kind of thing multiple times, talk with myself a little bit. Eventually, I might say, you know what? When I create comments, I want to explicitly say what post it's for. So I'm going to say that comments are created within a post. Right? And it's good to document all this stuff for myself, because eventually I'm going to forget why I did this. Right? And I'd like to come back to this document and read through it and understand what my thought process was. Right? Because in a couple weeks, I might learn more stuff. I might come back to this and say, hey, you know what? My logic was half-baked, but it's still salvageable. Maybe these are the little changes I need to make. Right? Cool. So I have a collection of routes. These are the things that I'm going to be working with. And at this point now, is probably a good place to start coding. I'm going to go ahead and make a new folder. This folder is going to be called, anybody want to give a name to this project? We could go big. We could IPO. You never know. Aiden, what's the name for this project? Cheddar. Yeah. All right, so we're going to be talking in Cheddar, where people can chat about things. That was a bad pun, right? Yeah, that was really bad. Yeah, we can make cheesy. It's like a cheesy forum situation. And in here, what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm going to go into my terminal and actually cd to it. So cd into Cheddar. And if this is going to be an npm project or like a node project, what's the first command that I run in here? npm init. Do you know what -y does? Yes to all. So here's npm init -y. I'm going to go ahead and just install a bunch of stuff. npm install express, because I'm going to be using express. I'm also going to install a little bit of middleware. For example, well, I'll use EJS. That's not necessarily middleware, but for my rendering. So npm install EJS. I'm also going to be using cookie session stuff. Body parser we'll probably be using. I already have NodeMon installed globally, but yeah, I could put in NodeMon if I wanted to. And then I'm going to put in a thing called Morgan. Has anyone talked to you about Morgan before? We'll see what Morgan is right from the start then. So we'll talk about Morgan. And then, what's that? And yeah, I mean, we could put in bcrypt. And if we wanted to do some like secure password stuff, right? Again, we'll kind of see where this demo goes. Right? This is going to be more of an unstructured, explorative demo. Right? What I want you to see is my process for building up an application. This isn't necessarily like, you're not necessarily going to take stuff from today's lecture and bring it into TinyApp. But this lecture will stick with you for the rest of your life. Maybe not. Yeah. Yeah, well, when I bring out, the cheese analogy, you'll be like super old, talking to your grandkids. You know, when I took boot camp. Yeah, you gotta check for the mold. So I've installed all these things. Now I have a node modules folder. I'm going to touch to make a server.js file. And I'm also going to go ahead and make a views folder. Whoops. I'm going to make a views folder. Oh my gosh. Views. Into which I'm going to put like a blank index EJS file. Right? Just some basic setup so that I don't have to do that later. Cool. And then I'm going to go ahead and go NodeMon server.js and just start it. And I'm never going to look at this ever again. Right? It's fine. I mean, that's not true. I'm probably going to come back and look at it, but I'm going to hide this for now. Now, he sounded scared. No. All right, so we're going to go back to, oh man. We're going to go back to VS Code. I'm going to open up my Cheetah server.js. And what I'm going to do in here is I'll bring in Express. Require Express. I'll go const app equals, and I'll make a new Express app. And then I can go app.listen. I'll pick a port, 1337. And then in here I could go console.log, listening on 1337. Okay. If I was to check nodemon, it's listening on 1337 now. Okay. Here is my application. Yeah. Cannot get slash. That's a good error. Cannot get. Great, I didn't make a route for that, so I shouldn't be expecting anything else. What is nice, though, is that unlike maybe some other silly ports, apparently that's not a real port. Let me go back. Let's do 1338. Some other ports which might crash on me, this one here instead actually gives me a response. 404. I could go ahead here and start writing some stuff, app.get or whatever, but I'm actually going to start by talking a little bit about middleware. Right? Every time somebody makes a request to my application, Express handles receiving that request, tossing it down a pipeline, and then eventually sending back a response. Right? Express handles that. Right? By default, what do you think the response is going to be? What was the response that I got here? Yeah, that's the default response. But like, look at all these routes that I didn't make. Right? I didn't make that route, but Express handles it. Right? So by default, Express is good at listening, handling, passing stuff down a pipeline, right? And then eventually sending a response. What Express gives us the ability to do is to put ourselves in the middle of that pipeline. Right? We can be part of that process. So for example here, maybe I'm happy with the 404 every time, but I would like my terminal. Where'd my terminal go? I would like my terminal to print something out every time somebody makes any kind of request. Right? What I'm able to do is create middleware. It's called middleware because it happens in the middle, between the request and the response. Right? I can make middleware by going app use, and then giving this a function. App use, and then I can give this a function. I could go app use, and then the function. What's it called when you pass a function as a parameter? It's called a callback, right? So the way Express is going to handle our middleware is that we give the callbacks. Because this code is not going to run right now, it will run later, right? So Express is going to handle that. This callback has to be formatted to say request, response, and next. Right? These are the things that Express expects. I can call these other things, right? But no. That what Express is going to be passing into here is the first parameter is going to be the request. The second parameter is going to be the half-baked response, because Express is going to start a response, and then it's going to give us access to adding more to it. Right? Like I said, the default response is 404. Right? And then I'm going to have access to whatever the next action to do is. Right? The usual standard for how people write this is they'll go REQ, RES, and next. Right? And our job inside of this middleware is to do anything we want, anything we want, and then eventually call next at some point in here. Right? The very last thing that should happen in our middleware should probably be next, because that's going to say, I'm done with this part of the pipeline, move it on to the rest of the pipeline. Right? So having made this middleware, every single time I make one of these requests now, I am still getting back a 404. I'm still getting back a 404, but if I was to check my terminal, I get a woo every time somebody makes a request. Right? That is all that middleware is for. Right? Middleware is for putting yourself in the middle of a request and a response. right? Everything else is up to you. So if, for example, as part of my middleware, I wanted to keep track of a number, right? I wanted to maybe go num++ and then console log what my number is, right? That's totally cool. Every time I make a request now, my program crashes. What did I do? Because I called it number instead of num. My bad. Every time I make a request now, that number goes up, right? I just came up with something I wanted to do. Middleware lets you do whatever you want as long as you dream it and then you build it. In fact, you can make complicated middleware. Right? Here's some fairly complicated middleware. I could, inside of this thing, always console log the request.path. Right? Every time somebody makes a request, maybe I'll console log what the path is. And now, if I'm over here, and I refresh this a bunch of times, it's showing me the path that the request was made to. If I went to /Kanye, I'm seeing /Kanye. Right? Interesting middleware. It's showing me what requests are coming in. Maybe I could log that to a file, right? If I wanted to keep track of what my users are doing. Maybe I also want to console log the method, right? Console log the method and the path. By all means, now I'm getting get/Kanye. And if I was to use curl, then I could make post to Kanye or put to Kanye or all that. Again, what's the response that I'm getting? What's the response? The default one, the 404, right? I haven't touched the response yet. I could touch it. If I wanted to in here, I could say something like, hey, if the request method is get, right? And maybe I could say in here, and the request path is /Kanye. Then I could maybe say res dot. And notice how I have access to res here. I could say res dot send Kanye page. Right? Else we could do next. Right? And I'll zoom out and make this really visible for you. What I've done here is I've made my own little routing in this middleware that says if somebody makes a request with the method get and the path Kanye, send them some data that says Kanye page. Right? Otherwise, just continue down the pipeline. And what I'm going to see here now is if I go to /Kanye, I got Kanye page. It's not the default response. It's not a 404 anymore. I actually got something. But if I go to literally anything else, cannot get. Right? It would be bananas for me to have to write every single one of my routes inside of this one piece of middleware. Right? It would take a lot of work. So instead, Express gives us access to app.get and app.post. These things are really just shorthand for this. Right? App.get and app.post, and we might take a look at app.delete today. These things are middleware. Right? They've just been written in a nicer way for us. Right? So technically, you've been working with middleware this entire time. Right? All the middleware is stuff between the request and the response. Right? Now, like I said, middleware can get really exciting. I could do all kinds of interesting things. For example, this one here is a piece of middleware at the moment that does a little bit of routing. And then I might have a separate piece of middleware. I might have a separate piece of middleware for my console log of the stuff coming through. Right? That might be a little separate one. And then this way here, I could do both of those things where on one end, did my thing crash? It did. No, it didn't. Oh, it's because in here, what's the one ingredient that I'm missing in here? I'm missing next, right? So I need to go next. So now, I can make requests, and I'll end up getting that output. But if I make a get request to /Kanye, I get my Kanye page and the output, right? So what middleware really allows us to do is build up our application of lots of little plugins, right? Express is really nice because you can plug all kinds of stuff in, right? In fact, most of the time when you're building an Express application, you say, now I need to put in maybe user authentication, or maybe I need to put in like a render engine. Instead of building it yourself, you might look up, does middleware for that already exist? For example, this whole console log to see the nice output of the requests, such a common thing that somebody's already made it. Const Morgan equals, and I'm going to require in that Morgan package that I installed earlier. Right? Morgan is really just a package that is for middleware. app.use Morgan. And there's a little bit of extra stuff that I can put to this. I think I can go tiny. There you go. And this is saying app use Morgan tiny is going to return a middleware function, right? And the Morgan package actually lets me pick a bunch of different configurations for Morgan. And we'll see what it does. It's listening on 1337. I commented out my console log one that I made here. I still have my Kanye page. And when I refresh this, what Morgan does is it prints out that stuff nicely. Right? It prints out how long the request took. Right? It prints out what response I got. So a 304, I think, means not changed. Like the content is still the same. And if I go ahead and make requests to other stuff, I'm going to see that I'm sending back 404s for the other ones. And that's all that Morgan is. If I wanted to change, instead of dev, I can pick common. We'll see what that does. Prints it out slightly bigger, right? Slightly longer. But at the end of the day, really all that Morgan does is it wraps up their own version of this big function, right? Their own version of that. Is middleware starting to make a little bit more sense now, right? Applications in Express are just made up of little plugins on this pipeline, right? And it all comes down to what Julia said, which is HTTP is a request response protocol. So as long as we keep ourselves in that mindset, then we're able to kind of do anything within this. Okay. Now, it is 10:57, so I'm going to do one last thing. We're just going to bring in I think we'll make like a list of users who are already like existing. We'll make the routes for creating users later, and we'll make some posts as well. So maybe we'll start off with posts. Const posts. I can decide what my posts might look like. For example, I might say each one of my posts has an ID, right? Like A might be the ID. And maybe each post has some title. Wow, I love Keanu Reeves. And then maybe it also has some content. And it's, he's breathtaking. Anybody want to make a post to Cheddar? Scott, do you want to make a post? Just let your heart sing. I have no idea. And what's the content for this one? Cheese. There you go. I'm a little worried about Scott. There you go. So we have a couple posts, and ideally I want to be able to see these posts. So I might want to have app.get, right? An app.get that says when somebody makes a GET request to /posts, in here I want to request response. I want to be able to do something like res.send, or for sending back just an object, we'll do JSON posts. Okay. Where all that I'm really doing here is I'm constructing this thing constructs a response that has the posts in it. Right. I'm writing this right now because we're going to do like a bit more on this after we come back from a break. But I wanted to give you something to chew on a little bit. When I go to /posts now, I get back all the posts as a big object. Right? While you're on a break, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a EJS page that's going to render these posts nicely so that you don't have to wait for me to write that. That sound good? Cool. So if in that process, though, when we come back to it, there's code or there's stuff happening that you didn't expect, just stop me and we can go over what I wrote during the break. Right? I just don't want to make you watch things that you've seen before. Are there questions that are burning for right now? And is this helpful so far? Cool. So we'll take a break. It's 11. We'll come back at, let's do 11:13. That sound good? So at 11:13, we'll pick back up again. Ah, okay. All right. So we'll just get started. Do we have pretty much everyone? I think we're missing James and Nancy's over there, but close enough. Oh, this is where we get to gossip about James. He's really tall, isn't he? No, I'm not good at gossiping. Huh? That's a good one? Yeah. Yeah. All right, so during the break, what I ended up doing was I filled out basically the EJS file that I said I was going to make. So the EJS file, all I've added to it is, let me just undo. All I've added to it is a big H1 that says, welcome to Cheddar, right? An H2 that says login, an empty form. This form is not being used for anything right now, but it's kind of like what do you call it? It's foreshadowing. We're just foreshadowing something we'll do later. Yeah, yeah. There you go. If you see a form on Nima's demo, then you know what's going to happen in the second half, right? Have you ever watched Shaun of the Dead? What? Shaun of the Dead's amazing. What are you talking about? Yeah, Shaun of the Dead has a literal Chekhov's gun. Like in the first half of the thing, you see like the gun on the bar, and then it's a great movie. Just watch it. Hot Fuzz is great. I liked World's End a lot. I know it wasn't people's favorite, but I thought it was deep. So the other things that I added here was just an H2 that says posts, and then a template of what a post should look like. Right? Ideally, I could be able to have many posts. Right? Tons of posts. And when I go here and I refresh, wow, look at all those posts. And the reason that I'm seeing this now when I go to /posts is because the other thing that I did while you were on a break is that I switched it out. Instead of saying res JSON, right? I've got res render, right? Res JSON is used for when you want to send back an object. This is not going to be useful for us in TinyApp, but you're going to see this in like next week's project in Tweeter, right? And you're going to be working with res JSON later on. But for right now, we'll be working with res render. And the other thing that I had to do was I had to set in a little bit of middleware that said, set the view engine to EJS, right? In the same way that I could make my own middleware like this, and then I showed you that with common middleware, Express gives us shorthand for apt-get. Exact same thing for when we're talking about view engines, right? This here is a type of middleware where basically Express is going to say, if you call render, right? If you call res render, then I'm going to pass things through a view engine, right? I get to pack that into here and say I want to use EJS, right? Are there other kinds of view engines? Absolutely, right? There's going to be a view engine called Pug, right? The view engine called Pug, it's got a cuter logo than EJS. It's got a little, where are you at? It's got a little dog. Got a good dog, right? And they just use a different type of template than EJS. In EJS, the things that I did were with the angle bracket % equals. In Pug, you find the example here. Where are you at? Well, thanks for not showing me any. Oh, there you go. In Pug, it looks like this, sort of. Like where you're going to be using words like P, and it's just a bit different. Let me find like a Pug example for view. Right. We're not actually going to be working with this. There you go. So in Pug, like right in the middle of your file, like here's a P tag. If I want to make a P tag then using Pug, I would go P, and then I can pipe in information like this. I think Pug looks awkward compared to EJS personally. Right? Scott, you don't look like you like it at all. Yeah. You look like you smelled a wet dog. That's Pug for you. Yeah. You're like, nope. Right? Some people really like Pug. whatever, to each their own. We're using EJS. I'm rendering the index page, and that's what I see right now, this thing over here. Right? Now, I don't want to just show hard-coded data. Right? I don't want to show hard-coded data, so I'm going to be using my template vars to pass stuff in. Right? Specifically, what I want to say in my EJS, and this is where I usually like to start working, is maybe I'll make I might make a main or something. I'm going to say inside of this thing that for every single one of the posts, right? For every single one of the posts, so maybe for post of posts, right? Now my posts were objects, so I'm going to have to do something a bit different. But for post of posts, I want to do some stuff. Right? For post of posts, I want to do some things. And I can write whatever I want in here. Right? I could write an EJS thing, or I could even write a bunch of HTML and say for each one of my posts, here's what I want to display. Unfortunately, the way I've structured my posts, in my server is that they are objects within an object. Right? So it won't be as simple for me to go for of, because I can't do for of on objects. What I can do, though, is for like post index in posts, and that'll loop over. Right? Right? Or maybe post key in posts. Right? And that's what I'm going to have to use. Now, what I'm going to go ahead and do now is when I have my res render, what could I do to this now? If I want to pass the posts over to my index page, what do I have to do? I have to pass in an object. Specifically, I have to pass in an object over here with content. Right? I could either code it up in line, or I could give it a name like template vars. Go, OK, here's the template vars. And in my template vars, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say all my posts are getting passed down. So now for each one of my posts, something's being rendered. I have 2 posts, so only 2 things are being rendered. But if I had, for example, more posts, you see yet another thing. Woo, woo, woo. Right? Now, all of a sudden, I have 3 posts. Right? The important thing to get from this is that what the render engine does is it takes a template, and it takes some ingredients, and it mashes them together, and then it spits it out. Right? You need to specify what the template is, and you need to specify what the ingredients are. My template is this index page. Right? All it does is, for however many posts it's being given as ingredients, it will print out this div. And it's the same div every time. If I wanted to make this thing dynamic, what I might have to do is say, OK, let's go through the posts, use the post key, right, and get the title. And now I've made this thing dynamic to show, wow, I love Keanu Reeves. I have no idea, and yet another thing. Right? And if I want to make these other pieces here dynamic as well, then I could take this, which is, I think I called it content. So posts, post key, and then I think it was content, but we'll find out in a second. And then I refresh, and it was content. So now I have the content for the posts. Right? Again, I know this is something that you looked at this week, but I wanted to make an extra pass over it, because this is where I find I get stuck personally, right, is making that connection. Right? I can embed EJS literally anywhere I want in this page, anywhere. I could go in here on this C details, and I could go embed some JavaScript to say 1 + 1 + 1 + 1. What am I going to see on the other side now when I save and I refresh? I'm going to see 4 instead of C details. Right? So I can do those, like any kind of JavaScript thing that I want, including changing what my A tag should go to. For example, in here, I could go make this A tag point to, it should point to slash, this is going to be awkward because my syntax highlighting is going to break because it's like quote, quote, quote. Make it go to slash, and then, we'll do single quotes just because I'm super annoyed by that. We'll make this go to slash, and then posts, and then slash maybe the ID of the post itself. Now, I actually have access to the post ID. I have access to the post ID because that's the key. Right? The key might be A, B, or C in this case. So I'm going to say go to slash posts, slash, and then the post key. Right? What I'm writing here is not HTML. It's EJS, which is why my syntax highlighting here can sometimes get a little funky if you don't have your thing set to EJS. Right? So you can install syntax highlighting for EJS. In my case, I already have it, so it looks nice and pretty. Now, when I go ahead and I refresh this, each of these C details, when I check to see where it takes me to, so I've opened that link up in a new tab, took me to post/A. Right? You already have this in your tiny app. Now, I'm going to zoom ahead. I'm going to write a bunch of code. I'm going to talk my way through it. But my goal is to just end up with a couple different things that we're looking at. Specifically, I'm going to make some routes for adding comments now, okay, and some routes for adding posts. Okay. Does it sound good if I talk and code at the same time? And just go ahead with that. Well, again, stop me at any point. So I'm going to, at the moment, ignore the form. Yeah, we'll just ignore the form for now for the login. But what we will do is I'm going to make a form for making new post. Right? You make a form for creating a new post. This one here is going to say, here's a form. Right? Every form that I make is going to have a method and an action. Right? There aren't very many ways for a user to interact with a server. Right? One of the ways that a user can interact with a server is to write stuff directly in the URL. That is by default a GET request. If I write something in the URL and press enter, it makes a GET request to that place. Right? Another way that I can make GET requests is by using a regular form. If you don't have a method, your form by default, when you submit it, it makes a GET request. Right? But forms can also be used to make post requests. So I could say, hey, I'm giving the user access to being able to make a post request to /posts to create a new post. Now, my particular things that would go into this are maybe the title of the post. Right? The title of the post, so here's an input with a type, which is going to be text, because it's a text input. And then I need to give this input a name. Right? I might call this post title, right? Or something else. In this case here, I'm going to call it title. And then I'm going to have a second input in my form, which is maybe content. Right? This one's still a type text, or it could be a text area. Actually, I think it's area like that. And this one here could be content. The names are going to be really important for me. If I look at what I've got now, I've got a title. Text area doesn't, unless I spelled it wrong, is it text dash area? Depending on how you format the thing, it gives you a thing that you can drag to make the area bigger. But in this case here, maybe I'll just leave it as text still. So I've got this new post form. It shows me a title, and I could write. But I don't really have any way to submit this form. Right? So I need a submission button. That's the only way that I can actually make that request. Until I put a submission button, nothing's happening. I can make a submission button by going button, or I could also go input, type, submit. right? And now there's a submit button. Right? By default, this is the way that it just gets rendered on the screen. Now, when I write stuff on here, I may make a new post that says, Kanye is cool. And I could write some content. I could say, wow, I love Kanye. And then I could submit. Now I've made a post to /posts. Right? All that we're doing with forms, right? Forms are confusing with people. All that we're doing with forms is we're giving the user access to actually make requests at the click of a button. That's all a form is. Right? Giving the user access to hitting those endpoints without having to write stuff into the URL bar. This isn't the only way that we can give the user access to the server, right? But for this week, it's going to be the best way, right? Next week, we'll be looking at other ways using JavaScript. But that's beyond us right now. So I can submit. This thing is expecting someone to receive a posts. So I'm going to go into my server. I'm going to go ahead and just make a new route. App.posts. App.get. Post was the worst word for me to use as the resource. I should have made like, article or something, eh? Should we just go ahead and change that right now? I'm going to change the word posts everywhere to article. Yeah, so articles. This thing up here, articles. That's all good. And then over my index.js, I'm just going to say new article. Articles. Huh? Yeah, should we change it back? No. Articles. Cool. So just to make sure thing doesn't load anymore because I broke it. What's going on here? Cannot read property listen of undefined. I changed something somewhere where I wasn't supposed to change it. No, I just started this line of code here when I wasn't supposed to yet. Cool. Okay, we're all good. Articles. We're all good. So app.post to /articles, right? That's where I'm going to want to listen for the information that's going to make a new article. Now, I have access to request, response in here. I could console log those things, right? If I was to look into, and I'll do this with I'm going to console log what my request is. I had to turn it into a JSON string because it's such a big object that like sometimes it just shows object instead of the stuff that I'm looking for. In fact, I'll show you what I mean. We'll just do this as just show me request like that. Whenever I make a request now to a new article, this thing hangs because it's waiting for me to send the response back. And this here is showing me the entire request. Right? I could dig through this, and if I look enough, I will find information in here. Specifically, where are you at? You gotta like sniff it out. It's somewhere in here. There's so much. There you go. So there's a bunch of cookies or whatever, and then in here, where are you at? In here is the information from the form that I wrote. But it's like tough to find because it's not in the places that you expect it to be, which is annoying because the reason I'm submitting the form is to just send a little bit of information. What do I care about emit close? I don't even know what that means, right? What do I care? So instead, it would be nice for me to have just immediate access to the stuff that came through in the form. Instead of me directly using the request and digging into it, it's not body, but it's into, oh man, it's in here. Yeah, request body. Let's even see what that looks like when I send this request. All right, so request body is undefined. I don't even know where it is. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in body parser, right? And what body parser is going to do is body parser is going to easily give me access to the content that was in the form. That's all that body parser does. Is it's going to be a piece of middleware that reorganizes the request, right? It reorganizes it a little bit to give me access to the form data easily. Right? Now, I don't always remember how to put in the body parser, middleware, so I'm just going to look it up. You require it in, and then when you want to use it, you can say body parser, where are you at? Oh, they're putting it on specifically a route, which is weird. I've never seen anyone do that before. There we go. We're going to say app use, and then we call body parser, and we can give it some extra parameters. In my case, the way I'm expecting this thing to work, let me do this where I'm doing all the other middleware, is I'm going to say app use body parser, and then URL encoded extended true. Pretty sure that's the way your tiny app is set up, right? So we'll just do that for now. There's like the same way that you can configure Morgan in a bunch of ways, you can configure body parser in a bunch of ways, right? But this thing here now is going to make it so when I go rec.body, instead of getting undefined like I was getting before, right? Instead of getting undefined, what I'm going to get is I'm going to get the actual content, right? Title and content. And notice that those keys in that object, they match what is written in my form. Title and content. If I was to change this, if I was to change that, when I submit my form now, when I submit the form, what I end up seeing in my terminal is, wait, no, it's because I didn't refresh the page. I was supposed to refresh. When I submit my form, what I get back is title and W3D4, right? Just nice little incomprehensible text. That's why it's important for you to pick a good name for your form input. Content. Right? Was this something that you felt like you had a really good grasp on before? Was this valuable seeing this right now? Cool, OK. Again, feel totally like you could be totally candid and stop me when I'm going down something you've seen before. To be honest, I haven't watched Carl's 3-hour lecture, so I don't know what he covered. So I'm trying to patch things. So what I have here now is in rec.body, I can look at things and I can say, hey, the title is supposed to be coming from rec.body.title. The content is coming from rec.body.content, right? And if I wanted to push a new post into my app or into my thing, my list of posts, articles, I would go get me the articles, index the articles, and put something in there. Now, I'm going to need to have like an actual key in here for this. I mean, I don't want to write a whole random UUID thing right now. So what I'm going to do is const index equals 2. And I'm going to say, does this make sense? Yeah, index equals 2. And const possible is A, forgive me, A, B, C, D, E, and we're just going to go for a couple G, H, I. So these are all the possible post IDs. We'll just cycle through that. That way I don't end up with doubles. Do you get the thought process I'm going through right now? Instead of having like a full random thing, what I'm going to do is every time I need to get an index or a new key, I'm going to go use the index, that global index, and then go index plus plus. So next time it's going to be something else. Does that make sense to people? You look like it doesn't make sense, so we'll explain it again. You have in here something like your index. Huh? It does have to be a let, yeah. I, by default, often write const and then I change it to let. Good catch. So what you have is you have something like generate ID, right? And you go like let ID equals that, and then you use that in here. I just don't want to make this function right now, so I hack together something that kind of works like that, where the first time it's going to be C, the next time it's going to be D, then E, then F. Is that all right? OK. And then in the articles, what I'm going to store is the title. Yep. Yep. So you know what we'll do is we'll do let key equals possible index, just so that looks a bit nicer. Cool. And then this would be key. And so now every time somebody submits something, like it will have made a thing with a weird key. So now when I go back and I submit, I'm not seeing anything because I didn't send back a response. But if I was to refresh this, I see this new post. Right? And I go ahead and I make a new one, and I submit, and I see a new post. Right? Until I restart my server, then it clears everything. Right? So at the end of this, what I might want to do is res.send. Good job. Like, thanks for making the new post. Or what's probably more useful is to redirect somebody to /posts. What did I call it? /articles. So that every time somebody makes a new one, it just sends you back. So here I start off at this. I'm realizing that I have 0, 1, 2. So my beginning index should actually be 3. So now whenever I make a new article, Express is the best. And I submit. What I end up getting is Express is the best. And lots of stuff. Now, I've made it to a point where it's just about time for me to, we're going to decide, huh? Oh, to commit, yeah. It would be time for me to commit if I was a real developer. But I'm a teacher, I don't code. So it is, I think, about time for me to decide to either, and I'll leave the choice up to you right now, should we do authentication or should we do many routes and how to clean up the routes? You pick. Can we get hands up for authentication? All right. Can we get hands up for how to clean up routes? All right. Unfortunately, the people have spoken. We'll do authentication first in a quick way then. And then if you need more, we'll dive deeper. And we'll try to make some time for the cleaning up routes as well. So for authentication, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say that all I want to see is if I've logged in, I shouldn't see this form. Like if I've logged in, it should show me hello and then your name. And if you haven't logged in, then it'll show you this form. I'm not going to do registration right now. I'm going to do authentication. Right? So for authentication, what that means is in my index.ejs, I should be able to see this login form that has an input, an input that's typed maybe text, that has the name maybe username, right? And then another one that is maybe for my password. And here I'm going to say username. This one's going to say password. Right? And what I see now when I refresh this is I have a whole new form up here that shows me username and password. Your browser's pretty smart. And if you have a, like what I do right now, if you have a password helper, which I will disable right now. I'm just going to disable. It'll like try to fill in stuff so that it like has information in there already. So you see here, it even shows me common usernames that I use on other websites or whatever. Whereas title is just showing me stuff that I've put into things that have been called title before. So what I also need in here is a submit button where we'll put in an input type submit. Fun fact. Your password, I don't want to show you Yeezy Lover, 25 or whatever. So instead, I might use the type password for my input, and then what that does is it turns this into little dots, right? Fun hack, yeah.
Is there a big difference between using a button and versus an input type?
No, no. An input of type submit is by default going to be a button, but I can make it a button with, I think, type submit in it, and it sends, and that just lets you more easily change the text that's in there. But I wonder if I just go like log in here, if that does that for me. Yeah, so that doesn't do that. Okay. There's going to be an attribute in here, something like value or something that lets you go log in. Yeah, so like something like that. Cool. So what I want to do right now is I want to write in my username and my password. So Yeezy Lover, and then it's going to be XXXX. Don't judge. And then my password might be hip hop. When I log in, it's not currently doing anything because my form is not pointing anywhere. Right? Now, we had that whole conversation about REST in the beginning, where REST is really how to come up with routes that deal with our data. Right? Unfortunately, REST doesn't solve every problem. Right? Sometimes you're going to show up like in your application, routes are going to show up that just can't be RESTful. When I say RESTful, what I mean is get, post, put, delete on a resource. In this case here, logging in is not a resource. The easiest way to kind of do this is just go method, make it a post, and then give it an action to just /login. And we're just going to have to eat this. Like, we're going to have to be OK with the fact that it's not RESTful. Some of our routes are just not going to conform to that standard. Right? That's OK. REST covers like 95% of the routes that you're going to make. Right? It'll be pretty good. Right? And REST is a good way for you to just brainstorm what routes do I need. In here now, though, I'm going to need an app. When somebody makes an app.post to /login, request, response. And in here, similarly to what I had up here, I will have access to let the username that's coming in be the particular username, so rec.body.username. Because thanks to the body parser middleware, I have access to that now. And password, rec.body.password. Now, I'm going to keep this simple compared to what you have in TinyApp. In TinyApp, there's all kinds of interesting things with bcrypt. I'll explain what bcrypt's role is, but I'm not going to use it in this application. Because technically, when we're logging in, what we have is a bunch of users. Right? We have a bunch of users. I'm going to be storing my users by like the username. You also generate, I think, a secret ID or something like that. But it's somewhere to have them stored. So maybe XX Yeezy Lover XX has like, I'll just save the username over here just to keep that twice. And maybe the password is hip hop, right? And then I might have another user in here, Drake Stan, and then here's Drake Stan, and the password is bad music. Right? What? Pop, pop. No. So shots fired. No, Drake's OK. All right, barely music. So, all right, barely hip hop. We'll do that. I don't want to get too saucy here with the whatevers. So Yeezy Lover, Drake Stan are my two users. They've got usernames and they've got passwords. And what I want to do in here is when somebody logs in, find the user in the database, right? And check to see if the password matches. What I can do is say if in my database, the user with that username, if their password matches my password that I just put in, then congrats. right, you have logged in. Otherwise, you have not logged in. And what I might do is send them to a page that has an error, right? In my case, what I'm going to do is just redirect them back to just slash. Right? In here, if there's been a success, what might I want to do? I might want to just send them back to the post. So that's still, oh, whoops, not slash, but articles. So I might still want to redirect them to slash articles. Right? Articles, yeah. Might want to send them back to articles, but there's something else that should happen once somebody has successfully logged in. Yeah, I might want to set a cookie. A cookie is kind of like a membership card, right? When you go to like a place, like a coffee shop, they don't know who you are. Like they're not, oh, minimum wage worker at Starbucks. I know you. I care so much about my regular, like, hello, Brandon, how's the, like, that's not going to happen, right? But if you show up with your, like, hello, I'm, like, whatever, then they'll pretend like they care. Like, oh, it's so nice to see you. Right? And that's what the server is doing. It's not actually remembering you, right? But if you log in, it'll stamp you. It'll put like a little thing on you so that when you come back, it goes, ah, yes. Yeah, Brandon. Hello, right? And that's all that a cookie is. That's all that a cookie is. We can store all kinds of useful information. For example, if somebody walks in, did you ever have people put kick me signs on you in elementary school or high school? That's what a cookie is. Like a server might go, I don't like this person, will kick me. And the user just walks around. They don't know what's on there. But then the server sees, oh, kick me. I remember that person. Like that's what I'm supposed to do. Or in this case here, logged in, I might go, okay, well, set a cookie with my name, maybe, or with my ID or something like that. Right? In my case, I'm keeping this simpler than your Tiny app. In your Tiny app, what you're doing is you have a whole bcrypt thing. What bcrypt does is instead of me physically writing out the password in text, what happens is there is a program that takes the text and then turns into a mush. It looks pretty good, right? Bcrypt is every day I just get notifications. I'm like, all right. Yeah. So that's my job. Crowdsourced bcrypt. Yeah. So in this case here, I've written this stuff out physically. Bcrypt has a thing that generates random stuff for you. That's a little less good than the other one that I made. Unfortunately, every single time it runs, it gives you a different random string. Those two random strings are related, though. So the first time I run the random string on Barely Hip Hop, what I might get is that. And then the second time I run the random string thing on Barely Hip Hop or bcrypt, I might get iOS, not iOS, Apple. I might get iTunes. So I would get maybe a couple different strings, but there's got to be some way to compare them. Since they're not the same string, can I do this? No, I cannot. I just can't. Instead, I'm going to leave it up to bcrypt to figure out how to compare them. What it's going to do is there's going to be a compare sync function where you tell it, compare these two things and either give me true or false if they match. Right? Bcrypt is going to do the math underneath. Can I go into the math for you? No. That's a whole course, right? That's a whole like 3-month university course on how that math works. Can you use it as a web developer? Yeah, dude, just compare sync. like, that's all you need to do, right? So that's what bcrypt's doing for you. It's being hidden behind a couple functions. I'm not using it in this particular exercise, but I'm just going to say if the two things are equal. Right? Your comparison in your Tiny app replaces this equal with compare sync, right? Does the syntax look exactly like this? No, because I want you to do some work, right? But I'm trying to point you in the direction of where this is going to be, right? Does that help you like intuitively understand bcrypt a little bit more and the role that it plays? right, in the compare sync. Right? If it doesn't, just talk to me after lecture. I might have some time. We can go over it together a bit more. At the end of the day, though, what I want us to do is set a cookie. I can go res dot, and I think it's set cookie, or res dot cookie, to set a cookie. Right? That's something that I can do. So I might go res dot cookie user, and then next to it you put the value that you want to keep. So maybe username, and maybe I want to store the username here. And what I get now is when somebody is not logged in, such as right now, and I go look at my cookies for the application, there are no cookies, right? 0 cookies. So there's none of them. There are no cookies, and that's totally fine. If I go ahead and I put in a username and a password that don't match with anything, it's totally fine. Can't read property password of undefined. Let's find out what I did. Right, so this would be if user's username and, so this says if there is a user with that username and that user's password is the same. So we go back, that's embarrassing. Let me refresh. So there's no user with that username, and there's also no user with that password, so nothing happens, and my cookies stay the same. Right? If I put my username as XX Yeezy Lover and my password is R and B, right? Not the right password, so I don't get in. But if I do XX Yeezy Lover and my password here is hip hop and I log in, lucky me, I got a cookie in there, right? And all that cookie is like I said, that rewards card or whatever, like that loyalty membership that I've been tagged with. Right? And as long as I come back with that cookie, whenever I make a request, such as get/articles, people can see, hey, does the request have a cookie for username? Right? If there is a username in my cookies, then do a particular thing. Else, do not do that thing. Right? If there is a cookie username, then maybe what I want to do is take my template vars and add a username. Right? Add my username to be the particular username. Otherwise, maybe what I want to do is set my username to be blank. Right? That's something that I could do. I could even start off by saying that my actual default username is blank unless I overwrite it. I'm going to leave it at this code here. Does this make sense? Okay, I know I zoomed a little bit through that, but the only part that I really want you to care about is I'm starting off my template vars with articles and a username that's blank. I'm looking in my cookies to see whether there is a username. If there is a username, then I'm going to change what the template vars username is. Otherwise, it'll stay blank. So I can be sure that there's always going to be a username being passed through my template vars. It'll either be blank or it'll be the particular username. Right? There's always going to be a value in there. So something to this tune, right? Like you can actually use this sort of in your Tiny app. There are situations where you need to pass in the username into your template vars. So maybe take a look at just how the pattern of this thing works a little bit. And the reason I'm doing this is so that in my index.ejs, what I can do is maybe say to hello, and then username. And what I will get is either the particular, username of undefined at line 59 of app-get. So 59 rec.cookies, because it's res.cookies. Your cookies are going to live in the response for some reason. And I didn't use cookie session, but you could use cookie session to do this as well. No, it's not. Embarrassing. It's something. Is there a request? Yeah, so it's going to be rec dot. You know what we could do is just toss in a console.log here and see what rec.cookies is. Yeah, shout out to Aiden. So just refresh this thing and see what it is. And over here in my terminal, looks like rec.cookies is undefined. Because that's supposed to be the cookie parser or whatever, right? Yeah, that's where I made the mistake. You know how I had to go through a bunch of trouble to get the form data in, and I had to bring in body parser? Same thing with cookies. The cookie stuff is somewhere inside of my request. It's somewhere in there, but it's not going to be as simple as just going .cookies to get it. So what I will have to do is either bring in cookie session or cookie parser to actually handle that stuff. Today, I'm going to use cookie parser. In TinyApp, you actually end up using both. You use cookie parser first, and then you switch over to cookie session. The reason you use cookie session is just to have secure cookies. That's it. In my case here, I'm going to npm install. So npm install cookie parser. While that's running, I'm going to bring in cookie parser and install it as middleware. Times it 1201. So I'm going to go app.use cookie parser. And yeah, and then you have to actually call it apparently as a function. All different middleware is going to have their own way of initializing it, right? The common theme is going to be app.use, and then they'll have something in here, right? So you have to look at the documentation for the middleware that you're using to see exactly how it should be initialized. See, this one's done like this. This one goes .url encoded, and this one does this instead. Right? It just comes down to the developer who made it. So now, when I want to set cookies, I can go set cookie. But when I want to get a cookie, I can go rec.cookies. So let's try this again. Refresh. All right, no, I need to start my app. Node-mon server. I'm going to start this again. Boop. Hello, object. And that's just because down here I took out the .username on my get. Where are you at? Where are you at? There you go. rec.cookies.username. Right. So if there is a username, then I will see there we go. XX Yeezy Lover XX. If there is a username. But if there isn't a username, so say for example I am not logged in. Oh man, my machine is slowed down to a crawl. So slow. There you go. If there isn't a cookie, like say I clear this, now it'll just show hello blank. But I might want to decide if there is no username, like if it's a blank username, then maybe what I want to do on my index.ejs is say, don't show that hello, such as if the username is falsy, i.e. it's an empty string, right? If it's falsy, then here's what I want to do. Then here's what I want to do. If there is no username, show me the login form. Right? Otherwise, show me what you got. Right? Otherwise, show me hello with the username. Right? And here I've put in some logic into the EJS side to dynamically display different things. It either shows me the login form, or if I go Nima Bosgrino, and then my password is gonna XX Yeezy Lover, and my password is hip hop. When I log in, it shows me that. And if for some way I logged out by clearing my cookies, then it doesn't show me that anymore. Right? Was this helpful? Right? Just thinking about cookies as a thing that the server just attaches to you, does that help you? Right? You can attach anything. right? In this case here, it was helpful to me to attach the username, right? For you, you're going to be attaching other things because you're using cookie session, and you can attach all kinds of information to there. Right? Cookies might be used when you're maybe on like an online shopping cart, and they want to keep the state of your shopping cart. Right? That would be a place where maybe it could be used. Now, what I'm going to do is, first of all, are there any questions about what's happened right now? What I'm going to do is I am going to do that last little bit that I said I would, which was split this into smaller routers, right, or smaller files. Because if I look at my server thing, I already have made it to a point where I have routes for all kinds of different things. Like I have a route for login. I have a route for articles. And I have a route for /get articles and post articles. Like they're kind of unrelated, right? Imagine that I also had routes for comments. Like I said at the beginning of the lecture, we didn't get there. That's fine. But imagine that I had those routes. I would want to maybe separate them. And one of the things that I have access to with Express is making little routers. So if I look into Express, where are you at? Where are you at? Router. Router. There we go. I have access to making mini Express applications. Teeny, teeny, tiny little ones that I can use to build up bigger bits. So for example, I might want to have, I'm just going to scroll all the way up here for this. We'll go down here. I might want to have all of my login, etc. stuff, right? And then I might also want to have all of my /articles stuff. And then I might also want to have all of my /comments stuff or whatever, right? I might want to put that in different places. For me right now, we're going to do these two. And what I would like to do is I would like to keep, just gonna wait a sec. What I would like to do is I would like to keep maybe this article stuff, right? Everything from line like 69 here all the way down to 105. I might want to keep that in its own file, right? So I could go into my folder, and maybe I'll make a new file called like articles routes or something like that. Commonly, what you'll find is people will make a folder called routes, and then in here they'll make a file called articles, right? And then maybe I'll make another one called like users, like or user stuff.js, where I'll put in the login things. And in my articles one, I can paste this stuff in here, but it's not going to be as simple as me just pasting it in and being happy. What I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to bring in the mini router things. So for what that's going to look like is in this articles.js, I'm going to have to say var express is, and bring in express, var router. So instead of var, we'll use const. Const router, and here's a little router. And notice that this thing is not the same. It's not the same as app like this, because my router is not a standalone Express application. It's just part of it. Right? It's going to be a little part. And everywhere where this thing says app, I'm going to take that and I'm going to replace it with router. Right? I could replace it with router or whatever I want to call this. If I wanted to call this article routes, then that's cool as well. I can just take this and make sure that says article routes. Right? Often we're going to pick a nice name for this here. And at the end of this, what I'm able to do is I'm able to say module.exports and export out the article routes, so that all the article routes are packaged up somewhere. Now, over on the server side, I'm going to have to import. I'm going to have to import, so const article routes, and I'll have to like bring that in, right? So require routes article. Right? I'll have to bring that in. And now what I'm able to do is, instead of having to register my routes here explicitly, I can say app.use. This is some middleware. App.use, and I'll say anytime somebody makes a request to /articles, anytime somebody makes a request to that, don't handle it here, but rather pass it to the article routes. This is some middleware that acts explicitly just on a little bit of route, just these routes. This means if somebody makes a GET request to /articles, or GET request to /articles/new. We didn't do that today, but like imagine that existed, or a post request to /articles, or a GET request to /articles/12/comments. Anything that begins with the prefix /articles is going to be passed down to this. Not only will it be passed down, it will be stripped of its prefix. So if somebody makes a request to /articles/new, what this middleware does here is it takes this, it cuts that down, and my article routes is going to receive this request. Right? So over on my article routes, all of these ones here, I get to take off the word articles, because it's redundant. Right? Why would I need to write this again? What I have now is I've modularized my application a little bit. I've moved all of the article routes into that particular place. Right? If I wanted to do the same thing with my login stuff, I could. Right? I'm just not going to do that right now. And I'm going to see that this is almost going to work. When I go to /articles now, I run into an error. What is the error that I'm getting? Articles is not defined, specifically at my articles.js line 11. When we go to see articles.js line 11, here's line 11, and it's saying articles, and then articles here. What is the problem? Yep. We'll do Renee and then over here. What was that? Yeah, I don't have the articles over here. Right? The articles are defined over on the server JS page. One solution that I could use is I could grab this and move it over to here. Right? You said I could do maybe an import. That is also something that I could probably do. The way I'm going to do it right now is just, since my articles are not used by any of these routes over here, these routes don't talk to my articles, then I'm just keeping it modularized in this one place. And now what I have is my routes still all work. Right? My routes work. This login stuff also works. If I wanted to make a new article, here's an article, wrapping deconstructed. I love wrap. I just picked a thing that was in there. Now I get a different error. And what's the error? Possible is not defined. Probably the same thing. If I go look at articles.js 46, so this is articles.js line 46, I'm again dealing with something that is not in scope here. So I have to go over to my server side and make sure that I port that over. And so here's that. And now I should be OK. Right? So wrapping deconstructed is in there. We covered a ton of stuff today, right? This was a big lecture. This is the kind of lecture that we call an advanced lecture. Now, you're going to have more of these kinds of lectures going forward into the boot camp. And the thing that I want you to pull from these lectures is not the fact that you need to learn all the stuff that I just did, right? But rather that this is the place that we're trying to work towards, right? And that the stuff that we did today is going to come up in assignments next week, right? This is so that you don't feel as surprised when you see it next week. It's also just to get you interested in particular things, right? So if there are things that I did today, such as this router thing, which is not part of TinyApp, but if it's interesting to you, then you can dive into it and start learning about it. Right? if you didn't get it, and that's okay. This is not core curriculum right now. It's for later. Was this helpful today? Cool. That's good to hear. Was the cheese, the moldy cheese with the holes, does that help a little bit on the debugging aspect?
I don't know how you didn't like plan that out.
I'm just.
It was too elaborate. There's no way
Yeah.
that sharp and that quick.
You know what? Like, I'll be honest. That was me on the spot. That was me That was me freestyling. Some people freestyle rap. I freestyle lectures. Like a lecture mixtape?
No, for her dad. You were saying you were making like a playlist.
Yeah, like my own mixtape. Should it be like?
You rapping.
Yeah.
About like software stuff and like analogies.
That's
and, like, metaphors.
That's a really good idea. What do you think of like genuinely me putting together like a 40-minute audiobook / mixtape thing?
100%. You know that playlist that you have on Spotify for like coding?
Yeah.
You would have way more followers than just like on just your like weekly like improv 15-minute just
Yeah.
down.
That's a good idea. You know what? I'm gonna put it in my calendar. My goal is then by the end of your cohort, I'll have put together
make an
like,
app
yeah.
that like distributes this
Yes.
whatever.
Okay, and by the end of the cohort, I will have put together one 15-minute freestyle lecture. Yeah, just, what's up, Nima? And I just go about, what are we gonna learn today? I have no idea. So yeah, flip table. Actually, something that I do like talking about is where the lecture is over now, technically. So congrats, you've made it. But the places where I draw inspiration for like how I like doing the demos are, first of all, Bob Ross. Yeah. So Bob Ross, one of my favorites for like pedagogy, right? So I know I'm kind of like a slightly more excitable Bob Ross. So Bob Ross, there's Simply Explained. It's like a YouTube channel. No, Simply Casually Explained. This person who explains things in your life or whatever. And then my like number one, so this is like, is she into you or whatever, and it's explanations. But my number one of like where I draw things from is Daniel Schiffman. And this person might actually be very useful for you to like look into. Daniel Schiffman's a programmer, but also like a teacher. Right? And Daniel, Dr. Schiffman does, the Coding Train. They have like a video series called Coding Train. Their videos are, for the most part, based around coding in a programming language called processing, for making like visual art, right? For making like coding art. But they also have tutorials on JavaScript, right? So if there are concepts in JavaScript that you would like explained more, I would look up the Coding Train, go into playlists, and they'll have some like intro to JavaScript stuff in here. Okay, so this is machine learning with JavaScript, so maybe don't do that, but there's gonna be some like introduction to JavaScript stuff down here, right? JavaScript and strings, regular expressions, how to work with Node.js, and all that might be worth looking into, right? Neat. Cool. And the reason I brought him up is because whenever he starts his videos, they're always live streams, and he doesn't know what he's gonna be talking about that day. So there'll be like 2-hour videos of just him like,
Oh wait, he's the guy with like the crazy obnoxious hand gestures.
yeah.
Like brings it right up into the camera.
Oh yeah, he zooms in and all that. He does this, like I do sometimes. Cool. So that was the end of the lecture. Thanks for sitting in. Like I said, we went over about like 20 minutes, but I was candid about that. Have a great rest of the day. If you do have questions, just message me. Notes will be out soon, but it's going to take me a little while to prepare stuff, right? There's technically nothing from this lecture that you need in TinyApp, though. Okay? Cool. Have a good rest of your day.